Hello world, welcome and welcome back to the channel, where today your local by Aeroways internet goblin wants to wish you a happy Pride Month. In light of this time of year, I really wanted to use this as an opportunity to draw a few of my OCTPs. I know what you're thinking, it would make more sense to post this video closer to the beginning of the month, but because my first video June, per my schedule, happened to land on my birthday, it made more sense with the timing to do things this way and have a Pride Month video go up right after my birthday video. So right off, I predict the algorithm is going to use this video as toilet paper thanks to the orange man in the White House, but darn it, I have a lot of LGBT OC pairings and I can draw nice art for them if I want to. I picked 3 of what I consider to be my most iconic couples, starting with my first LGBT pairing I created, and the one that I think most people who know me will recognize, which are Kleinod and Weltraum. For anyone who doesn't know, they're the main characters of a fanime I conceptualized back in high school called The Caged Underworld, which follows 2 ghosts who fight incorporeal monsters as they work their way through the land of the dead and strive to become its leaders, and all the drama and rivalry that ensues when pieces of their souls become trapped inside the body of a young girl whose consciousness only exists in an incorporeal world after having a near-death experience. The series recently celebrated the 10th anniversary of its creation back in 2023, and I made a bunch of videos for the occasion, including one where I gave a complete plot synopsis for all 4 arcs of the story, and another where I read a bunch of pages I made for a gag comic spinoff I was developing at the time. So if you're interested in learning more about what this animation project was all about, and you're looking for some podcast style videos to keep you company for the next 3 hours, I'll put a link for the entire playlist of anniversary videos in the description. So my idea for all 3 of these couple drawings was to have each character be wearing clothes that were in the same color as their respective pride flag, but Kleinod and Weltraum's piece came with some unique challenges. First of all, Kleinod and Weltraum have the most pronounced height difference of all the couples that are featured in this video. Kleinod is 5'10" and Weltraum is 4'8", and it was very important for me that this came across in the illustration, but this severely limited my options for poses because if they were too far apart, then there would be too much empty space in the composition, but if they were so close that they were overlapping, it could cover up too much of the flag designs that were on their clothes, so I couldn't have that either. The other challenge that came my way had to do with Kleinod specifically, because he's the only character out of all the couples I'm drawing here who represents more than one flag since he's gay and asexual, which meant that while everyone else was relatively straightforward in which colors I could choose for their outfits, with Kleinod there were like 8 different combination flags and standalone flags that I could potentially use, so deciding on just one was a little much. You can see at first that I went with 2 different flags when I was coloring the initial sketch, and right away I realized how ugly that combination looked on an outfit, so during the flag color stage, after I completed the final line art, I just gave him the colors of the MLM asexual homo-romantic flag, which definitely turned out a lot better. So Kleinod and Weltraum are the characters I've had for the longest time and drawn the most out of everyone in this video, so my idea of how they should look is firmly cemented in my brain. Basically, drawing them with differently colored versions of their usual outfits was so incorrect to me. I felt like I was looking at something I shouldn't be looking at. My experience drawing this piece was a little weird because it felt like a trust the process kind of deal, but at the same time it kind of didn't. Like after I first drew this post thumbnail, I thought I absolutely hated it and would have to start all over again from scratch, but I ended up taking a break and coming back to the thumbnail later on and realized it wasn't as bad as I first thought, so I went ahead and moved on to a more refined sketch. This post wasn't really easy to come by either because I wasn't sure if I wanted to draw Kleinod and Weltraum in a situation that was either fluffy or silly, since they tend to banter a lot. Kleinod is the primary source of comic relief in the fanime, and Weltraum is his foil, who is frequently exasperated by Kleinod's constant puns and all-around tomfoolery, but in the end, Fluffy felt like the best option for this series of art. I feel like I should give a status report on TCU's comic reboot that's currently in development, and while I don't want to give too much away, so far it's going pretty well. I have an idea of what I want to accomplish with the story's thematic backbone, which is informing what ideas I consider and what ideas I can cut out, and some scaffolding of the plot in mind, so already that's definitely a lot more that I can say about what I was ever able to achieve for the original fanime draft. I swear I've convinced myself that my third eye opened and I'm getting writing enlightenment or something, but at the same time all this revolutionary new information feels like common knowledge and I'm just inept for taking so long to figure it out. Since I have plenty of other stories on my project roadmap that are ahead of the reboot, I want to complete those first before giving all my attention to this comic in particular, and in doing so I think I'll be able to dedicate more time to research and coming up with more concrete ideas, which will take me closer to a final draft. What a novel concept, working on a story project before starting another one. The Caged Underworld is the story that most people associate with me, so I feel a lot of responsibility to tell it properly, especially after ragging on the old draft that no one ever got to see so much. I want the definitive version of the story to exceed everyone's expectations. Alright, that wraps it up for our favorite gay ghost dorks, so let's see which couple I'll be drawing next. Our second pairing for this video is going to be Isabella and Sable from my debut manga 𝚖𝚒𝚒𝚎, which you can read for free on AO3 and itch.io as part of the Storyboard Volume 2 anthology comic scene. It's hard for me to give a synopsis for the story without giving too much away since it's only 10 pages long, but basically it follows our main character Isabella, who was born with water abilities that she had no idea weren't normal until she shows them off for the first time in front of her girlfriend Sable, and this new awareness of her power sends Isabella down a dark path after her personal life is disrupted by tumultuous changes. Yeah, get used to hearing me obnoxiously self-promote my comic in these videos. We're not out of the woods yet. If you did read the comic, I'd love to hear your opinions and thoughts. Maybe it's because I finished this comic so recently. I submitted my final check-in on April 3rd to be exact, but I feel like this couple art came together the easiest compared to the other two I made for this video since drawing these characters over and over was still fresh in my mind. Right away I knew what kind of pose I wanted to draw the two of them in, namely sharing a drink together, which was motivated by Sable's whole Visco girl style, so at some point I just had to draw her with some kind of aesthetic Starbucks mermaid frappe adjacent thing. As easy as it was for me to come up with a pose idea though, Isabella's layered bangs are always a major pain to draw. Her hairstyle kind of influenced my toning method in the comic, since I made more work for myself as I tried to show the different areas of shape and dimension, since her hair is black and I couldn't rely on line art to reveal those forms. So if her hair was different or more simplified, I probably would have adopted a completely different style of toning. Speaking of toning, when I was younger and developing other manga projects I had at the time, that was always the part of the process I would look forward to the most. I'm one of those artists who has years worth of hoarded screen tone packs, so once I began working on the final art for the pages of my comic, I had so much pent up screen tone energy ready to be released. In hindsight, I think I was a little too enthusiastic to unleash my inner screen tone fiend because I definitely applied way too much and the artwork is kind of hard to look at as a result. Don't get me wrong, I still love screen tone and I have no intention to stop using it, but for my next manga project, I'm definitely going to scale back on how much I use. So I first created Isabella and Sable back in 2018, but then kind of abandoned them afterwards until I got the idea to turn their story into a comic for the zine, and if I had created them more recently, I probably would have stylized them a little differently, but experimenting with different ways of drawing them changed my perception of them too much, so I tried to stick relatively closely to how I drew them back then. Something I thought about a lot, both when I was working on this comic and when I first created this character, is how much Isabella felt like a female version of Kleinod. They're both dumb and goofy, but overall suffer a lot in their respective stories, and that was enough for one to really remind me of the other. Thinking this over a little more though, Isabella is definitely more extroverted and less conscientious than Kleinod, but just looking at their surface level traits, I can see why I thought they had so much in common. One thing that sets Isabella and Sable apart from the other pairings in this video is that they're the only characters who don't have a single default outfit they're always depicted in, which gave me a lot of freedom that I thoroughly appreciated in terms of coming up with clothes for them to wear and subsequently use their flat colors on. Not so fun fact, when I was preparing for the comic, I sank a lot of time into designing all the various outfits Isabella and Sable would wear in each scene of the story and how they looked from different angles, but because the story was so short, I had to make economic use of each page, which meant the vast majority of the panels were so small that so many details of the outfits got lost, which was painful to come to terms with. I was liking how the illustration was coming out, but there was something about the colors that made them look too flat for my liking, and I couldn't put my finger as to what I could specifically change to improve this. Serendipitously, I had gotten this short recommended on my YouTube homepage about the 𝚎𝚘𝚎𝚎 rainbow skin coloring technique, and I decided to give it a try here to see if that would solve my problem. I mean, what better time than Pride Month to test out an art hack involving rainbows, am I right? I'll put a link to the tutorial I found in the description, but basically you lay down stripes of different colors over your finished drawing in a specific order and color pattern, then Gaussian blur it, set the blending mode to either multiply or overlay, I chose overlay, and lower the opacity to about 30%. It's subtle, and I know when you're first adding the rainbow it makes your character look like they belong in a bad case of stripes, but it really makes a substantial difference in making the skin look a lot more alive and realistic than it otherwise would, and I want to try implementing this in my coloring workflow from now on. The joy of underpainting. I also incorporated this technique in the next drawing I made after this one, although I intentionally skipped over Kleinod and Weltraum since they are dead, so it wouldn't make sense for them to have color variation in their whatever facsimile for skin an incorporeal ghost would have. Speaking of the next drawing, now that Isabella and Sable are done, it's time to move on to the last couple for this video. I wonder if you can guess who they'll be. Finally, our third pairing will be Jake and Noah, who first appeared in a video I uploaded earlier this year for Valentine's Day, where I created an OC ship from BuzzFeed personality test results. Unlike the previous two couples, Jake and Noah aren't part of any larger story and are entirely self-contained characters, which makes me wonder, how many of your OCs are just standalone self-contained characters, and do you have any OCs that are meant for some bigger narrative, like an original story or a fanfiction or something? If you have OCs in both camps, how many in one category outweigh the other? Are you a standalone OC creator who wishes they could create more OCs that were part of a story, or vice versa? In past videos I mentioned my slightly unusual entry into the art community where I learned how to draw so I could turn my ideas for novels into comics because I thought those stories would be better told in a visual format, which results in me taking OCs that are part of indie story projects for granted. Every once in a while I consider the idea of making some sort of story where I can show Jake and Noah's dynamic, but since the vast majority of my characters are part of the cast for a story project, it's kind of refreshing to have OCs that are allowed to just exist on their own, and I don't want to disturb that. Still, I'm pretty attached to these guys and I want to draw them more and put them in different scenarios. I think they have a lot of potential. I feel like a good way to sum up Jake and Noah's dynamic would be Bert and Ernie if they were furries. Jake is very hyper, naive, sensitive, and kind of a himbo, while Noah's more reserved, standoffish, and brutally honest. Late last year, I started reading the Ouran High School Host Club manga for the first time, which I completed last month, and Noah's personality reminds me of a combination of Kyoya and Maurice. But one thing Jake and Noah have in common, despite their personalities being complete opposites, is their interest in the art of filmmaking. This also made coming up with a couples post for the two of them pretty easy. I knew right away that I wanted Jake to be sleeping with his head in Noah's lap while Noah was looking through a movie art book. Originally, I was gonna have Noah's book be The Museum of Wes Anderson, but partway through I changed my mind and went with the film paintings of David Lynch instead because for some reason that felt like it made more sense for Noah's character. What's funny is that Isabella and Sable also have an interest in movies, so it makes me wonder how these two pairs, or even all three of the pairings in this video, would get along if they ever hung out together. I'm kind of a sucker for crossover character scenarios, so this kind of premise is something I'm a little too easily entertained by. Speaking of OC crossovers, which reminds me of group attacks on Artfight, I definitely want Jake, Noah, Isabella, and Sable to be part of my character roster, either this year or the year after. I'm a little busy right now, so we'll see how things turn out. I'm coming from the mentality of wanting to draw proper character sheets from scratch, but so far I've been able to get through just fine with only my initial splash art I already had pre-made, so I'll just post my full body art I drew for, at the very least, Jake and Noah and work on the reference sheets once I have the time to do so. Since I wasn't able to participate in Artfight last year, I'm really looking forward to making this year my comeback. This is actually the first time I've drawn Jake and Noah since that Valentine's Day video, so even though they also have default outfits like Kleinod and Weltraum, I wasn't so used to drawing them that seeing an altered version of their normal wardrobe didn't feel like a crime, even though at first I did accidentally miscolor some parts of Jake's sweater because I was following his reference too closely. Jake and Noah are my most recently created OCs, both within the video and among the rest of my characters as a whole, and that, plus the fact that they're standalone characters whom I haven't drawn in 4 months, puts me in a unique situation where, along with the smooth time I had creating a colored variant of their outfits, I'm having an equally difficult time coming up with relevant things to say for their part of the voiceover because they're not giving me a whole lot to work with. It kind of feels like a blessing and a curse that this video is so short because, on the one hand, I don't have to pad out this commentary with too much unnecessary nonsense, but on the other hand, I've fallen into a pattern of releasing videos that are between 20 minutes and an hour long, that now creating a video with a 15-minute runtime feels unreasonably short to me. Is this how you guys feel when you're watching my videos, or has my sense of perception regarding video length been irreparably warped? So I want to use this time to express how happy I am that I decided to take on this little drawing exercise. It helped me get out of a bad art rut that I was in and carry that energy on towards making more and better art after a period where I wasn't really drawing as often as I normally would, and it even gave me the chance to try out a cool new art technique that I'll definitely be making more use of in my future art. With that said, Jake and Noah's illustration is now complete! So here's all the art that I created for today's video. I had so much fun getting to draw all of my different OC pairings. Some of these characters I haven't drawn in a long time or have only drawn for the specific project they belong to, So making some nice casual art of all of them felt so good. Now I have even more of a reason to finish my other comic project so that I can add even more couples to this category when the time comes that other people will resonate with, but in the meantime, it's time for me to shut this video down. Make sure to give boba cats and pats snacks and playtime before you log out, and head to the description of this video to find links for every other corner of cyberspace I'm on. Thanks for letting me chat with you, and until next time, happy Pride Month!